I used to think silence was the glue that held families together. Now I know it was just the tape covering the cracks. My name is Nina Cole. I'm 28 years old, a pharmacy assistant who works the late night shift, the kind of job people forget exists unless they need something at 7 a.m. I've always liked routines. Order calms me, lists comfort me, and for most of my life, I truly believed that if I stayed steady, honest, and patient, people would treat me the same way. But they didn't. Before I continue my story, let me ask you something. Would you sacrifice your happiness to please family, or stand firm to protect yourself? Share your honest opinion in the comments. I truly want to hear your perspective. The night everything changed, I stood in the middle of our dimly lit living room, the place I had kept running, quietly, invisibly, for years. The blinds were half closed, casting slanted shadows across the floor. My father's voice still echoed in the air, sharp enough to slice through whatever was left of my attachment to that house. I remember gripping the strap of my overnight bag, not because I needed much, just a few clothes, my work shoes, my documents, but because holding something stopped my hands from shaking. I didn't yell back, I didn't cry, I didn't plead. I simply breathed, slow and steady, feeling my heartbeat settle the longer I stayed quiet. That was the moment I realized calm could be a form of power. The refrigerator hummed behind me. The walls felt too close. My sister Maribel hovered near the hallway, not meeting my eyes. My younger brother Jordan pretended to scroll through his phone. And my father, Samuel, stood planted like a stone, enraged that I had finally said no to one more request for money. My last look at them wasn't heartbreak. It was clarity. I walked out into the cool night air. The sky looked clean, almost gentle, like it knew something I didn't. When I closed the front door behind me, it didn't slam. It clicked. Softly. Final. I didn't rush. I didn't stumble. I simply left. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in my small rented studio eating takeout after a long shift at the pharmacy when my phone lit up. It was my father, then my sister, then my brother. Calls, then texts, then voicemails. The mortgage was overdue. The warnings had arrived, and suddenly they were all terrified because without telling them, I had stopped paying the half of the mortgage I had been quietly covering for years. My father's final voicemail ended with a line I never expected to hear. "Nina, why did you cut the payments? What's wrong with you?" I listened to it twice. Then I smirked. Slow, controlled, almost sad. Nothing was wrong with me. They had just lost the person who held everything together. Here at Revenge Bible, we explore real psychological stories of betrayal and justice. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss our next emotional reckoning. Before everything unraveled, my life was simple in the kind of way that demands quiet strength. I worked as a pharmacy assistant at a mid-sized grocery store chain. My days were filled with blue prescription bottles, insurance calls, and the familiar soft beep of the register. I color-coded everything. My planner, my financial folders, my work notes. It was my way of keeping order when everything else felt unpredictable. Home, however, was a different story. After my mother died, the house changed. It felt colder, heavier, as if her warmth had been holding the temperature steady. My father, once stern but fair, grew brittle. His fuse shortened, his pride sharpened, and my siblings, Maribel and Jordan, leaned into roles that suited them far too comfortably. Maribel was the charismatic manipulator, always with a crisis that required my wallet to solve. Jordan was the laid-back youngest, drifting through life with the confidence of someone who expected someone else to pick up after him. And me? I became the scaffolding. Quiet, dependable, overextended. At first, covering part of the mortgage felt like the right thing to do. My father had lost hours at work, and the bills were piling up. Then the electricity bill was short, then the water, then the house repairs. I could handle it, I told myself, just until things stabilize. But until stretched into years. The house wasn't mine, yet I was paying for it. The debts weren't mine, yet I was cleaning them up. The responsibility wasn't mine, but they all placed it on my shoulders because I never dropped it. Still, I held on to this naive belief. If I gave enough, cared enough, worked enough, they would see me. Not as a resource, not as a fallback plan, but as a daughter and sister they valued. My mother would have understood the weight I carried. She would have told me to ease up, to breathe, to let them learn from their own choices. But with her gone, I became the family's unspoken solution. My days followed a pattern. Wake up early, work 8 hours, grab groceries, pay a bill, apologize for someone else's mistake, try to sleep, repeat. The nights were the hardest. I'd lie in bed thinking about a future that didn't exist yet, a life where I didn't feel guilty for wanting boundaries, a place where silence wasn't the safest option. My father's temper didn't help. He snapped easily, especially when money was involved. He never asked how much I contributed. He never asked if I was managing. He just assumed I was fine because I didn't complain. Looking back, I think my quiet made him believe I was unbreakable. But I wasn't. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table, sorting receipts, I glanced at the crooked family photo on the wall. My mother's smile, bright, sincere, felt like a fading memory. My father stood beside her, stern but proud. My siblings and I filled the bottom half of the frame in a frozen moment that no longer resembled our reality. I wondered then, was I keeping this family together? Or was I enabling them to fall apart? I didn't know the answer. Not yet. But I would soon. The betrayal wasn't a single moment. It was 1,000 small ones accumulating until the weight finally cracked something open in me. It happened on a Thursday night, the kind of evening where the air hangs heavy with the quiet expectation of conflict. I had just come home from work, exhausted from covering a coworker's shift. My scrubs smelled faintly of disinfectant, and my feet ached. Maribel was pacing in the living room, her phone pressed to her ear. Jordan was sprawled across the couch, headphones in, oblivious. My father was at the dining table, staring at a pile of unopened bills. The moment I walked in, the room shifted. Eyes turned to me, not with warmth, but with expectation. Maribel hung up and launched straight into it. "Nina, I need $200. Today. It's urgent." Her tone was rehearsed, demanding. Like a bill collector rather than a sister. I didn't respond right away.
Instead, I took off my jacket slowly, deliberately, trying to keep my breathing steady. What for, this time? It doesn't matter, she snapped. Just help me, okay? You always do. There it was. The assumption. The entitlement. Jordan chimed in without removing his headphones. Yeah, Nina, don't make it a whole thing. My father didn't look at me. He never did during these moments. He simply exhaled sharply, as if my hesitation personally inconvenienced him. I sat at the table, directly across from him. Maribel, I can't give you money right now. I'm covering part of the mortgage. I have my own bills. The room went still. Maribel blinked, processing the word she wasn't used to hearing. No. What do you mean you can't? You're literally the stable one. And that's the problem, I whispered, mostly to myself. My father finally looked up. His eyes were tired, but angry. Always angry. You're being dramatic, Nina. Just help your sister. It's family. A bitter laugh almost slipped out. I wasn't just contributing. I was carrying half the mortgage. But he didn't want to know that. He wanted obedience, not honesty. I kept my voice steady. I'm not giving you $200, Maribel. Not today, not again. The silence stretched so thin, it could cut. My father stood slowly, pushing his chair back. He walked toward me with that rigid posture he used when he was ready to deliver final decisions. And then he said it. Get out of my house and never come back. Just like that. No hesitation, no second thought. Maribel didn't protest. Jordan didn't look up. As if they had been waiting for this moment. As if removing me from the equation would free them from accountability. I stared at my father, not with heartbreak, but with a strange, surreal calm. Something inside me had been quietly dying for years, but hearing those words somehow set it free. Okay. My father's face flickered with something. Confusion? Triumph? I couldn't tell. I walked to my room, packed a small bag, left everything else behind. When I came back out, Maribel stood near the door, arms crossed. That's it? She asked. No speech, no tears? I zipped my bag. No, I answered. Not anymore. My father didn't look at me. Jordan didn't either. I stepped outside. The air felt lighter than it had in years. The betrayal wasn't just that they pushed me out. It was that they were relieved to see me go.
Leaving the house didn't break me. What broke me was realizing how quickly life became quieter, lighter, without their demands. I moved into a small studio apartment above a laundromat. The walls were thin, the floor creaked, and the water pressure was questionable. But it was mine. Every square foot belonged to me, and me alone. For the first time in years, I woke up without dread. But the peace didn't last long.
2 weeks after I moved out, the messages started. At first, they were subtle. Are you busy? Call Dad. It's important. Then they turned urgent. Why did the bank send a notice? Dad is freaking out. Did something happen with the mortgage? I ignored them at first, not out of spite, but out of exhaustion. And then the voicemail came. My father's voice. Sharp, strained, edged with something I had rarely heard from him. Desperation. Nina, the bank says we're behind on payments. Why did you stop paying your part? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with me? The irony was almost beautiful. For years, he never asked if I was okay. Never asked how much I was paying. Never asked if I could afford it. But the moment I stopped, the moment he felt the consequences of my absence, suddenly he needed answers. I saved the voicemail. Then I did what I had always done. I organized things. Screenshots of every transfer I'd made, emails, receipts, notes, call logs, bank statements. Evidence of the financial skeleton holding up that house, and the skeleton was me. As I sorted everything into color-coded digital folders, I felt something shift inside me, a clarity, a rising steadiness. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It wasn't even simple neglect. It was exploitation disguised as family duty. The discovery was not that they needed me. I had always known that. The discovery was that they never valued what I gave. They only valued access to it. And in that tiny apartment, surrounded by the hum of dryers below me and the rustle of papers on my desk, I realized the truth that changed everything. They were never going to stop using me. Not until I stopped letting them.
The plan wasn't revenge. Not at first. Not in the dramatic, cinematic sense. It was survival. It was self-preservation. It was reclaiming the life I had surrendered without noticing. But clarity has a way of shaping quiet justice into something sharper. I began with documentation. Every payment, every debt I covered, every message where they demanded help, every voicemail where my father minimized my contributions, every moment I financially held them together. I organized it all into 3 neatly labeled folders: mortgage support, family requests, and financial dependency patterns. Color-coded, because that grounding habit never left me. Next, I reached out to someone I trusted. Gabriella, my coworker and close friend, who happened to be studying to become a paralegal. We met at a coffee shop after my shift. The place smelled like espresso and faint cinnamon, and the soft hum of conversation gave the moment an odd sense of comfort. I told her everything. When she finished, she leaned back in her chair, eyebrows raised. Nina, this isn't just unfair. This is years of documented financial exploitation. You realize that, right? I nodded. What do you want to do? She asked. That question stayed with me. What did I want to do? I didn't want to punish them. I didn't want to ruin them. I just wanted them to finally see themselves clearly, without me absorbing the impact of their actions. And maybe I wanted them to feel the weight I had carried quietly for so long. We devised a plan that felt calm, controlled, and above all, ethical. I would not confront them with anger. I would not scream. I would not return to that house. Instead, I would create a simple, undeniable mirror. a timeline of everything I contributed, a record of every time they dismissed me, a breakdown of what the mortgage looked like without me. Not to shame them, to make the truth impossible to ignore. When we finished crafting the document, a 14-page PDF with clean formatting, clear dates, and meticulous notes, I felt something unfamiliar. Relief. Control. Peace. If you're drawn to stories where calm turns to power, stay with us. Subscribe to Revenge Bible for more tales of justice served quietly.
Revenge for me wasn't loud. It was quiet, measured, almost gentle. I sent the document to all three of them, my father, Maribel, and Jordan. One concise message. This is why the payment stopped. This is everything I covered alone. This is what you told me to walk away from. Nina. Then I turned my phone off. Hours later, I turned it back on. Voicemails flooded in. My father's voice was different now, unsteady, defensive. You didn't tell us you were paying that much. Why didn't you say something? We thought you were exaggerating. My sister cried in hers, not out of remorse, but out of fear. Nina, you can't just leave us like this. We didn't know you were doing all that. You should have said no sooner. And Jordan. His message stunned me with its honesty. I didn't realize, Nina. I'm sorry. I should have helped. I should have been better. Not perfect, but real. Later, my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, who had seen more than any of us realized, called me to say she overheard the commotion. Mija, they thought the house could run without you. Now they know the truth. The poetic part of revenge isn't pain. It's clarity. Their panic wasn't satisfaction for me. Their remorse wasn't vindication. The real revenge was this. They finally saw me. They finally saw themselves. And they finally understood the one thing I had tried so hard to avoid admitting. Without me, their stability was an illusion. I didn't go back. Not to the house, not to the role, not to the version of myself that existed only to support others. I built a new rhythm in my little studio. Slow mornings, quiet nights, fresh notebooks, a fridge that held exactly what I bought and nothing more. My father eventually stabilized. My siblings started taking responsibility, not because they wanted to, but because they had no other choice. Sometimes growth begins where entitlement ends. I forgave them. Not with words, not with reunions, not with dramatic reconciliations, but silently. For myself. Forgiveness, I learned, is less like opening a door and more like setting down a weight. One day, as I walked home from work, the sun setting in soft gold, I realized something. Peace doesn't arrive suddenly. It grows, quietly, consistently. Like a plant finally getting the light it always needed. I used to believe silence was my weakness. Now I know it was my strategy. And walking away wasn't my breaking point, it was my beginning.
This was another story from Revenge Bible, where we turn pain into purpose and betrayal into balance. Subscribe and join us for the next transformation.